welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be setting aside the myth of the rational human being.
That's right.
We're diving into the systematic and sometimes pretty hilarious ways our brains just fail us when we make decisions.
Yeah.
From buying a coffee maker all the way up to choosing a career.
And this entire deep dive is centered on the really revolutionary work of Dan Ariely, especially his book, Predictably Irrational.
Right, the hidden forces that shape our decisions.
The mission for us here is, I think, fundamental. It's to really confront and maybe even dismantle the whole premise of classical economics.
This idea that we're all rational.
Exactly. For centuries, the standard theory has just assumed we're these rational agents, making logical choices to maximize our utility. And if we make a mistake, the market fixes it.
And Ariely's research just shows that it's profoundly untrue. We don't just make a few mistakes here and there.
Yeah.
We are fundamentally, structurally irrational.
But here's the key, and it's in the title. This irrationality is so consistent, so universal, that it becomes predictable.
Yeah.
Which is the entire field of behavioral economics, right? It draws from psychology and economics to show that our behaviors are irrational ones. They're not random. They're not senseless.
They follow patterns.
They follow consistent patterns. And that means if you can identify the pattern, you can anticipate the mistake and maybe even design systems to counteract it.
And we have to talk about where this worldview even came from for him, because it's crucial. He shares this deeply personal story. When he was 18, a magnesium flare exploded.
It's an incredible story. 70% of his body, third-degree burns.
It led to years of painful treatment
Yeah.
and just this feeling of being completely separated from society.
He was literally wrapped up, isolated, and that physical distance gave him this incredible observational advantage. He started seeing everyday behavior, from nurses to patients, as if he were
An outsider.
an observer from another
Yeah.
planet. Yeah, that separation fueled his curiosity about why we do what we do, especially when it seems to work against our own well-being.
So let's unpack this. Why we keep making the same mistakes. We should start where all decisions start, right? With comparison, with this idea of relativity.
That's a powerful starting point. Ariely argues that most of us, we just don't know what we want unless we see it in context.
Right.
We need these external reference points, a benchmark, to land our decisions.
That makes total sense. I mean, you can't judge if a $2,000 racing bike is a good deal unless you see it next to a $1,500 one and a $4,000 one. We just don't have an internal price checker.
And that reliance on context is exactly what marketers exploit. It's a mechanism called the decoy effect.
Okay.
We tend to focus on comparing things that are easily comparable, and we just ignore the choices that are harder to weigh against each other.
Give us that classic vacation example. It shows just how fast the rational brain sort of collapses.
Okay, so imagine you're choosing a trip. You're torn. A week in Rome or a week in Paris. Both are pretty similar in value, culture, price. It's a tough 50-50 call.
A difficult comparison.
Very. But then the travel agent introduces a third option. A week in Rome, but without the free breakfast. For the same price. This is the decoy.
So it's a slightly worse Rome.
It's an obviously inferior version of one of the choices, and suddenly the decision isn't between Rome and Paris anymore.
Now it's between the bad Rome and the good Rome.
Exactly. And the choice is instant. The original Rome package becomes the obvious winner, not just over the decoy, but over Paris too, even though Paris didn't change at all.
The decoy just makes the comparison simple, so we flock to it.
It makes Rome look demonstrably better, not just subjectively different, and the majority of people will just shift their choice completely.
And the most surprising place this shows up was that MIT dating experiment.
I mean,
It works even for choosing people.
indeed. Participants were shown pictures of two equally attractive people, let's call them A and B. Then they were shown a third option, a slightly distorted, kind of inferior version of A, so A.
The decoy was just a slightly less appealing version of one of the options.
Yeah. And the results were just striking. When that decoy, A, was present, participants chose the original undistorted person, A, a staggering 75% of the time.
Wow.
The decoy didn't make A objectively more attractive, but it made A instantly comparable and visibly superior to its counterpart. It made the choice a no-brainer.
That's wildly irrational.
Yeah.
But predictably so. And this whole idea of relying on these initial points of reference, it leads us straight into anchoring.
Anchoring, right. The idea here is that our very first valuation just sticks, even if that first valuation was completely arbitrary.
Like imprinting.
Exactly like imprinting, like a baby goose attaching to the first thing it sees. That initial number, that first price, it acts as an anchor that just drags all subsequent decisions toward it.
The SSN bidding experiment is the classic example here because it shows the sheer power of just random numbers.
It's an amazing study. MBA students were asked to write down the last 2 digits of their social security number.
Right. Then say if they'd pay that amount in dollars for things like wine or a computer mouse.
Yeah.
And then they had to actually bid on the items.
So you have this completely arbitrary anchor, the SSN, that should have zero predictive power over a rational bid.
But it did.
Oh, absolutely. The students whose SSNs ended in high digits, say 80 to 99, they placed bids that were just massively higher, hundreds of percentage points higher on some items than the students with low SSNs.
And these are MBA students, people trained in rational market analysis. The random number they wrote down just became the starting point for their internal valuation.
It just shows how deep this mechanism goes, and the influence of anchoring is everywhere, especially in these huge life decisions like housing or salaries.
You see this when people move, right?
Absolutely. Think about someone moving from, I don't know, an inexpensive market like Lubbock, Texas, to a moderately priced city like Pittsburgh.
They're anchored to those low prices.
They're completely anchored. They'll look at the median home price in Pittsburgh and think, this is outrageous. I can get twice the house for half the price back home.
And the reverse is true, too.
Precisely. Someone moving from Los Angeles to Pittsburgh often continues to spend an amount similar to their old high prices. Their original high price tag acts as a high anchor, causing them to overpay in the new market.
So the takeaway for you is that the first price you see, the first number you state in negotiation, that sets the peg for everything that follows.
It's incredibly powerful.
So if a totally random social security number can set our baseline, what happens when that number is zero?
Now we're moving from relativity to what Ariely calls the cost of zero cost.
The power of free E.
And zero isn't just a price, it's an emotional hot button. The idea of something being free E is it's psychologically irresistible. We forget the downside and we often ignore way better deals.
The chocolate experiment is the perfect illustration of this.
It is. They offered a cheap Hershey's Kiss and a much more expensive high-quality Lindt truffle. When they were priced normally, most people chose the truffle. They saw the better value.
But then they dropped the price of both by the same amount.
Right, which made the Hershey's Kiss free and the Lindt truffle just a few cents.
And logically, the relative price difference is the same. The truffle is still the better deal.
Standard economic theory would predict the preference holds steady. But the second the Kiss became free, everything flipped. Shoppers overwhelmingly grabbed the free Kiss, completely ignoring the objectively better value of the truffle.
So it's not about the utility, it's about the emotion.
It's tied to our fear of loss, which is one of the most powerful psychological drivers we have. If something costs 1 cent, you risk losing that cent.
But if it's free?
There is no visible possibility of loss. And that feeling, that elimination of risk, is way more compelling to our brains than maximizing objective value.
Okay, so let's take that transactional mindset and see how it bleeds into our personal lives. This is the clash of social norms versus market norms.
We really do operate in 2 parallel worlds, and mixing them up can be a disaster.
The social world is all warm and fuzzy, community, mutual obligation.
No instant payback required. Market norms, on the other hand, are transactional explicit. You pay for what you get.
And the cautionary tale here is the Thanksgiving dinner disaster.
Exactly. You know, you love your mother-in-law's cooking. She spends all day preparing a meal out of love, and then you offer her $400 for it.
You've just introduced a market norm into a social exchange.
And you've damaged the relationship. Because the meal was supposed to be priceless, not commercial. You can't put a price on it.
And we can actually quantify how much damage this does, right? With the cookie effect experiment.
The Starbursts one, yeah. When students were offered free Starbursts, a social interaction, they politely took about 1 candy per person. They were being considerate.
They didn't want to seem greedy.
Right, social justice. But when a price was introduced, even a tiny one, 1 cent, the average consumption just jumped to 3.5 candies.
So just putting a price tag on it, even a tiny one, it chased away all the social norms of courtesy and sharing.
And activated the market norm of selfish maximization. Get as much as you can for your money.
Wow.
And you don't even need an actual transaction. Just thinking about money changes how we behave.
That's the scrambled sentence test.
Right. They primed students with words related to money, like salary, and then gave them a puzzle. The money-primed students behaved completely differently.
How so?
They became much more self-reliant. They took way longer to ask for help with the puzzle, struggling for almost twice as long as the control group, and when asked to help others, they were less willing to volunteer.
Just thinking about money made them transactional and isolated.
Exactly, focused solely on their own self-interest.
So, if our external environment prices, decoys, even just words, can dictate our choices, what happens when our internal environment, our own emotions, shift dramatically? This is the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde effect.
The influence of arousal. And we are systematically terrible at predicting how our attitudes will change when we go from a cold, rational state into a hot, emotionally charged one.
We can't empathize with our future selves.
That's the empathy gap. And the Berkeley arousal experiment on male students showed just how wide that chasm is.
They asked them questions in a calm, cold state about their preferences and morality. Then they got them into an aroused, hot state and asked the same questions again.
The under-prediction was staggering. When they were in that hot state, their reported desire to engage in risky or even immoral behavior it skyrocketed, often over 100% higher than what they had rationally predicted for themselves when they were calm.
So it's not just that our judgment bends under pressure, it breaks.
It completely breaks. Our rational superego gets shut down. And because we are so bad at predicting this total negation of our better judgment, we fail to prepare for it.
And this leads directly to the problem of procrastination and self-control.
Of course, we are constantly making these commitments in our cold, rational state. I'll start my diet Monday, I'll start saving next month. That our future gratification-seeking self immediately sabotages.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
And the MIT deadline experiment measured this perfectly. They split students into 3 groups for turning in papers.
Okay, what were they?
One group had 3 firm, evenly spaced deadlines, dictatorial. The second group had no deadlines until the very last day of class. Total freedom.
And the third?
The third group got to choose their own 3 deadlines, but with penalties for missing them.
You would think that smart, motivated students would do best with maximum freedom.
You would be wrong. The results are clear. The firm, dictated deadlines produced the best overall grades.
And the worst.
No deadlines. Total freedom led to the worst grades, and the self-imposed deadlines landed right in the middle.
So what does that tell us?
It shows that students know they procrastinate. They chose to set deadlines for themselves, so they value those pre-commitment tools.
Unless they didn't set the best ones.
They didn't set the most optimal or punishing boundaries for themselves, which is why the external dictated structure still won out. We know we have a flaw, we try to fix it, but we still need that external nudge.
So we need to actively build these pre-commitment tools into our lives.
Yeah.
Lock our rational self in charge before the emotional self takes over.
Yes. Think about healthcare. You could set a self-imposed financial penalty, maybe a refundable $100 deposit that you only get back after you get your cholesterol test.
You're using that fear of loss to enforce good behavior.
Exactly. Or you bunda complexity. Ariely brings up car maintenance. It used to be this list of thousands of separate tasks, which is just a recipe for procrastination.
Right.
So automakers like Ford and Honda bundled them into 3 simple timed service events. By making the right action easy and clear, they eliminated the procrastination. It's designing the environment to work with our flaws, not against them.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little. Let's look at how our biases don't just affect our decisions, but our actual physical perception of the world. The power of expectations.
This one is wild. It suggests our beliefs literally change what we experience.
Not just how we judge it, but the experience itself.
The MIT brew experiment is the perfect example. Participants tasted 2 beers. One was regular Budweiser, and the other was Budweiser with a few drops of balsamic vinegar, the MIT brew.
And if you tell them in advance that it has vinegar in it,
they hate it. No surprise there. Their expectation of a bad taste creates a bad taste.
but here's the twist.
The real twist. When they were told nothing beforehand, most of them actually preferred the MIT brew with the vinegar.
What?
And crucially, when they tasted it first, liked it, and were only told about the vinegar afterward, they still liked it just as much. The negative expectation, when introduced before tasting, literally modified the sensory experience.
It's not a filter, it's a modifier. That's incredible. That's happening all the time with branding, right? If you expect something expensive to be good, you genuinely perceive it as being better.
Which brings us to how we value things we own. the high price of ownership or the endowment effect.
We fall in love with what we have. We instantly inflate its value.
The Duke basketball ticket experiment is just the most extreme example of this. Students camped out for weeks for a chance to buy tickets to a huge game.
A lottery decided who got one and who didn't. And that's when the cognitive gap appeared.
The students who won the tickets, when asked how much they'd sell for, demanded around $2,400 on average,
justifying it with the lifelong memories they would be giving up.
Meanwhile, the students who lost the lottery were only willing to pay about $175 for the exact same ticket.
That's a factor of 14, a massive difference in valuation, just because one group had owned the ticket for a couple of days.
The owner focuses on what they will lose, the experience. The buyer focuses on what they will gain, a piece of paper, and the cash they have to give up. And we just assume everyone else sees the value the way we do.
And they never do. That's why people get so offended when they get a low offer on their house after they've put in expensive, personalized renovations.
Exactly. They fell in love with their custom kitchen. A buyer just sees a potential tear-out cost. It's a painful lesson in ownership bias.
So after all this, all this predictable irrationality, what's the silver lining? It sounds a little like we're just doomed to make bad choices.
Not at all. That's the beauty of it. The silver lining is that because the flaws are systematic, we can design solutions. We can create these free lunches that benefit everyone by leveraging our biases for good.
This is where things like the Save More Tomorrow retirement plan come from.
Yes, it's a direct application of behavioral economics to fight our procrastination.
How does it work?
It works by getting around our aversion to loss. Employees commit a percentage of their future salary raises to savings. Since they aren't losing any current take-home pay, the decision is psychologically almost painless.
It sidesteps that battle between our present self and our future self.
And it leads to massive increases in savings rates. It's about creating mechanisms that work with our irrationalities, instead of constantly fighting a losing battle for self-control.
If we're predictably irrational, then we can predictably guide ourselves toward better outcomes.
Precisely.
So let's leave you with a final thought on this, one that kind of ties everything together. Anchoring, relativity, the endowment effect. Ariely points out that the very first decision we make in a long chain,
that initial anchor.
Yeah, that initial anchor, whether it's choosing a career path or starting a relationship or even just what we paid for our first coffee at a new cafe, it has this powerful, percolating, long-lasting effect on all the future choices that seem rational.
He calls it arbitrary coherence. We make all our later decisions coherent with that first, often random anchor.
So, given that, think about this. How much of the life you have so carefully crafted, your career, your financial status, your relationships, is actually just the product of a relatively random first decision you made years ago that you've been blindly justifying ever since? It might be worth taking a moment to consciously question those foundational first decisions. They might not be milestones. They might just be anchors,